gonna change for me. They're gonna run more slowly. Now, when we get back, we're gonna compare.
Time will run differently for us?
Yeah. Maybe by the time I get back, we might even be the same age.
I assume you read the confidential findings report from the investigating committee.
I flipped through it.
I was especially interested in the section on Arroway's video unit. The one that recorded the static.
Continue.
The fact that it recorded static isn't what interests me.
Continue.
What interests me is that it recorded approximately 18 hours of it.
That is interesting, isn't it?
All right, we're going to be talking about two movies. One is called Interstellar with Matthew McConaughey, and the other one is called Contact, again with Matthew McConaughey. Interesting. And it's interesting because they're both telling us some biblical and supernatural things that are true. One of the things that they're showing us is that time is different in the other realms. And this is exactly what the Bible tells us. 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 8. But beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day. In fact, it can be called time dilation. Now, it's interesting language because when you look at biblical cosmology, it looks like we are in a womb. And the word womb means matrix. That's where the word matrix comes from. The womb. Remember the movie The Matrix? And it's interesting because lots of things in the Bible are likened to childbirth and seeds. Okay, so in the movie, they go through this wormhole that appeared in the sky or in the heavens, or in the movie they call it outer space. And in the beginning, they didn't know who put it there. They just thought, aliens or something put it there, but it turns out that they themselves from the future actually put this wormhole there. And basically they communicate back in the past to save the world. So in essence, he goes through the wormhole and he communicates. He's in this realm where he can communicate back on Earth, back in time to the past to save the world. And so then he does that, and he wakes up in the future. Like this wormhole takes him to the future, and it worked, right? So basically it's about time travel, so to speak. That he goes through the wormhole and he's in the future, communicating to the Earth in the past. But it's like Matthew McConaughey, when he goes through the wormhole, ends up in like this place where he's almost like in the present and in the future and in the past at the same time. And so then he completes sending the message to Earth in the past, and he wakes up in the future. And the interesting thing is that when we look in the Bible, everything has already happened. The future has already been written, kind of like in the movie Terminator. And we're almost just walking it out, right? And so we're just kind of playing our roles to get to the future that technically already exists.
Obi-Wan and Yoda basically teach Luke how to be a diviner, enchanter, charmer, consulter with familiar spirits, wizard, and necromancer. Enchantment or charming is hypnosis, mesmerism, bewitchment, and mind control, which is similar to the Jedi mind trick. ESP with clairvoyance and telepathy happens when Obi-Wan gives Luke lightsaber training with a blast shield covering his eyes. This also happens when Luke communicates with his sister Leia on Cloud City. Yoda teaches fortune-telling and psychic powers by telling Luke that he will see many things using the Force.
Through the Force, things you will see, other places, the future, the past, old friends long gone. For my ally is the Force, and a powerful ally it is. Life creates it, makes it grow. Its energy surrounds us and binds us. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter.
Now, that was Yoda from Star Wars explaining the Kabbalah and what they believe and what they understand. Is that through, their techniques, they can see the past, present, and future. And I do believe that. In fact, the government has come out and said that they do things like astral projection and see the future, especially with things that are going on and have gone on in my life. These people know the future, at least to an extent, and they know about the past. So this stuff is real. This is from the Kabbalah. And again, remember, the way that Satan works is that he will give people lots of truth, but he will slip in, all kinds of deception to this. The way that they access this knowledge is unlawfully according to God. You're not supposed to do things like witchcraft and seances and astral project and all these things that they do to obtain this knowledge. And this goes back to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil to make you wise and be as gods. This is that. And of course, a lot of truth comes with all of this, right? That is how major deception happens. Lots of truth mixed in with some lies. Now, in the movie Back to the Future, it's a similar concept, but except they send themselves back in time to communicate with themselves, right? So instead of communicating with somebody else in the past, they send themselves physically to the past to communicate with themselves. So the whole idea is your future self communicating with your past self. Is this happening? I have to be honest with you guys. I think that this is very possible because Ephesians chapter 2 verse 6 says that we are already, those of us who are saved, are seated with Christ in heavenly places. So technically, if we look at it biblically, we're already in the future in heaven. And if you're in the future already, are we communicating with ourselves here in the past, right now? Is that possible? Is how this thing works? I think it's very possible. And I think that they know this. And, they talk about the higher self and everything. Well, these terms are like new agey terms, but the Bible talks about the same type of thing. That you're already seated with Christ in heavenly places, perfect in God. Now, we're not perfect down here, and we're still in sinful flesh. So the Bible is kind of telling you the same idea that you are two places at once. You're in the future in heaven, and if you're in the future, you have access, kind of like God, to kind of the whole thing, the past, present, and future. So again, the idea comes to me that maybe this is kind of how it's working.
Quantum entanglement is a strange idea. Essentially, the idea is that there can be systems, so that means a collection of things, right? It could be two particles of light, or it could be a very much more complex system, even human beings. But these systems can be configured in such a way that information they contain is distributed across potentially vast regions of space. So the classic example would be two photons that are in what's called a state, quantum state, so let's call it a configuration, such that you could separate them by a light year, or 2 light years, or 3 light years, and they would still be in that configuration, which is a configuration that is so-called entangled. In other words, if you make measurements on this one, then it can change. That if you make measurements on this one, it will be spinning in a certain way or whatever it is.